The cursor blinked. That was the only movement in the room for a long time. Just that thin vertical black line appearing and disappearing on the screen, like a heartbeat that wouldn't settle down. Mr. Henderson took his glasses off. He rubbed the bridge of his nose, right where the plastic pads had dug two little red dents into his skin. He was tired. It was 40:15 p.m. on a Friday. The parking lot outside was already emptying. The aggressive revving of teenage engines fading into the hum of the highway a mile away. He wanted to go home. He wanted to close his laptop, lock the classroom door, and forget about the stack of AP history essays waiting in the cloud. But he couldn't get past this one. He put his glasses back on and looked at the screen again. The name at the top read Marcus Williams. The grade in the box remained empty. Beside the text of the essay, a sidebar from the grading software was open. It was a clean, modern interface, blue headers, gray text, professional. Objective. It offered a plagiarism and AI probability score. The number was red, bright. Alarming red, 92% probability of artificial generation. Henderson sighed. The sound was loud in the empty classroom. He looked at the empty desk in the third row, near the window. That was Marcus's desk. Marcus, who wore the same gray hoodie every day. Marcus, who never raised his hand. Marcus, who turned in worksheets that were often crumpled, sometimes stained with what looked like coffee or oil. Henderson liked Marcus. He really did. He told himself that often. He made a point to say, "Good morning," to him every single day, even when Marcus just gave a slight nod and kept walking. Henderson prided himself on that. He was one of the good ones here. He understood context. He understood backgrounds. He knew that the zip code Marcus lived in didn't have the same resources as the zip codes on the north side of the district. But this essay, he scrolled down. The prompt was about the economic impacts of Reconstruction. It was a dense topic. Most of the students, even the bright ones, regurgitated the textbook. They used words like bad, or hard, or unfair. Marcus had used the word systemic disenfranchisement. He had used socio-economic stagnation. Henderson read a sentence aloud to the empty room. The abrupt cessation of federal oversight did not merely pause progress, it inverted the mechanism of democracy, allowing the codification of labor practices that mirrored the very chattel slavery the war had ostensibly dismantled. It was beautiful. It was precise. It was a sentence a doctoral candidate would write. It was not a sentence a 17-year-old boy from the South Side who currently held a C- average would write. Henderson felt a familiar tightness in his chest. It was the feeling of being taken advantage of. He hated that feeling. He spent his days trying to reach these kids, trying to pull them up, and here was, statistically speaking, a lie. A shortcut. He clicked the analysis tab on the software. The algorithm highlighted the sentence in orange. Vocabulary complexity exceeds student baseline, the tooltip read. Sentence structure variance inconsistent with previous submissions. The machine was telling him what his gut was already whispering. The machine was neutral. It didn't care about Marcus's zip code. It didn't care about race. It was just math. It compared this paper to Marcus's previous papers, and it found a discrepancy so large it triggered the red flag. If Henderson ignored the flag, he was compromising the integrity of the class. If he gave Marcus an A on a cheated paper, what did that say to the girl in the front row who had spent 3 nights crying over her flashcards? It wasn't fair to her. Fairness was the most important thing. Fairness meant applying the rules equally regardless of who you were. He had to be fair. The door creaked. Henderson jumped slightly. He spun his chair around. Marcus was standing there. He had his backpack slung over one shoulder. He looked exactly as he always did, unreadable. He wasn't supposed to be here. School had been out for 45 minutes. "Mr. Henderson?" Marcus said. His voice was low. "Marcus," Henderson said, exhaling. "I thought you'd caught the bus." "Missed it," Marcus said. He didn't move from the doorway. "Janitor let me in to get my charger." He pointed to the outlet near the back wall. "Go ahead," Henderson said. Marcus walked into the room. He moved quietly. Sneakers on tile. He walked past the rows of empty desks, retrieved the white block and cord from the wall, and stuffed them into his pocket. He turned to leave. "Marcus, wait," Henderson said. The words were out before he had planned them. Marcus stopped. He turned back. He didn't look scared. He looked tired. He looked like a kid who knew that when a teacher said wait, it was never for good news. Yeah. Henderson turned his laptop screen slightly, shielding it, even though Marcus was too far away to see. I was just grading the reconstruction essays. Marcus went still. Okay. Yours is interesting. Okay. Did you enjoy the topic? Henderson asked. It was a trap. He knew it was a trap. He wanted to see if Marcus could talk about it. If he had really written it, he should be able to discuss the nuance of the codification of labor practices. Marcus shrugged. It was all right, just all right. Henderson pushed. He put on his supportive teacher smile. You used some very sophisticated language. Ostensibly dismantled. That's a powerful phrase, Marcus. Marcus looked at the floor, then back at Henderson. Is there a problem with the paper, Mr. Henderson? Direct. No stuttering. No guilt. I'm just surprised, Henderson said, leaning back. Based on your previous work, this is a significant jump. A massive jump, actually. I read a lot on this one, Marcus said. What did you read? Books. Which books? Marcus shifted his weight. Just books at the library. The downtown one. He didn't name a title. He didn't cite a source. Henderson looked back at the screen. 92% probability. The algorithm didn't lie. It matched patterns. And the pattern here was deception. If Henderson let this slide, he was failing Marcus. He was teaching him that he could fake his way through life. That he didn't need to do the work. That if he just copied and pasted the right smart-sounding words, he could fool the system. It was Henderson's job to teach him that the system had standards. Marcus, Henderson said, his voice dropping to that serious, confidential tone he used for discipline. I need you to be honest with me. Did you use an AI generator for this paper? Marcus didn't blink. No. The software flagged it, Henderson said gently. It says there's a 92% chance this isn't your writing. The software is wrong, Marcus said. It's rarely wrong, Marcus. It compares your writing style to millions of data points. It looks at your sentence structure. Henderson tapped the desk. Look, if you admit it now, we can just call it a redo. I'll let you rewrite it this weekend. No harm done. We can use this as a learning moment about academic integrity. He was offering a lifeline. He was being benevolent. He was giving the kid a way out of the lie. Marcus looked at Henderson. For a second, Henderson saw something flash in the boy's eyes. It wasn't fear. It was disappointment. Deep, heavy old disappointment. I wrote it, Marcus said. I didn't cheat. Henderson felt his patience snap. He had offered the easy way. Now he had to take the hard way. He couldn't let a student lie to his face. It was about respect. It was about order. I can't accept the paper, Marcus, Henderson said. He turned back to the screen. I have to follow the district policy on AI usage. If you can't provide the draft history or the source material right now, I have to mark it as a 0. I wrote it on the library computer, Marcus said. I don't have the history. That's convenient, Henderson muttered. It's the truth. The truth, Henderson said, typing into the comment box on the screen, is that this doesn't sound like you. The silence that followed was heavy. It pressed against the windows. What do I sound like, Mr. Henderson? Marcus asked. Henderson stopped typing. He looked up. Marcus wasn't being aggressive. He was just asking. You know what I mean? Henderson said, flustered. Your voice. Your usual cadence. This is different. This is polished. It's too perfect. So I get a 0 because it's too good. You get a 0 because it's not yours, Henderson said firmly. He moved the cursor to the grade box. He typed the number. Joe, I'm going to flag this for administrative review, Henderson said, not looking at the boy anymore. He felt a need to end the interaction. He had made the decision. The hard decision. The right decision. If you can prove to Vice Principal Lewis that you wrote it, he can override the grade. But for now, the policy stands. He hit enter. The grade locked in. The red flag on the screen turned into a permanent icon next to Marcus's name. A little red triangle. A mark on his record. Henderson waited for the explosion. He waited for Marcus to yell, to curse, to slam the door. But Marcus just stood there. He looked at Henderson for 3 long seconds. He looked at the teacher the way you look at a wall you realize you can't climb. Okay, Marcus said. He turned around and walked out. He didn't slam the door. He closed it quietly. Click. Henderson sat alone in the room. The hum of the computer fan seemed louder now. He stared at the 0. He felt a strange vibration in his stomach. It wasn't guilt, he told himself. It was just the adrenaline of confrontation. He had upheld the standard. He had refused to be duped. The software said 92%. You don't bet against those odds. He closed the laptop. It was just one grade. The kid could make it up. It wasn't the end of the world. Henderson stood up, grabbed his keys, and walked toward the door. He turned off the lights. The room went dark, except for the blinking standby light of the computer monitor. Just a standard procedure. Monday morning didn't smell like fresh starts. It smelled like floor wax and burnt coffee. Mr. Henderson stood in the faculty workroom, waiting for the copier to warm up. The machine was old. It hummed a low, aggressive frequency that you could feel in your teeth. He watched the paper tray slide up and down, a mechanical breathing rhythm. He had 25 copies of a worksheet on the Industrial Revolution to print. He wasn't thinking about Marcus Williams. He had successfully compartmentalized Friday afternoon. It was a skill you learned after 5 years of teaching. You put the weekend in a box, and you put the students in a box, and you never let the liquids mix. Friday was a decision. Monday was just execution. Morning, Rob. Henderson turned. It was Linda, the department head. She was holding a mug that said teacher by day, ninja by night. She looked exhausted. Morning, Linda, Henderson said. Copier's acting up again. It's always the toner, she said, leaning against the counter. She took a sip of coffee and grimaced. Hey, I saw the flag on the dashboard this morning. The Williams kid. Henderson nodded. He felt a small spike of defensive energy. Yeah, 92%. 92. Linda whistled. She shook her head. That's brazen. Usually they try to mix it up, change a few words. But 92, that's just copy, paste. That's what I thought, Henderson said. The validation felt like a warm blanket. He hadn't realized how much he needed it until that moment. I gave him a chance to come clean. He denied it. Of course he did, Linda said. She set her mug down. They always deny it. I had a girl last week, honors student, tried to pass off a chat GPT analysis of The Great Gatsby. It cited a chapter that didn't exist. She looked me in the eye and swore on her grandmother's grave she wrote it. What did you do? 0, Linda said. She mimed a slicing motion across her neck. We can't let it slide, Rob. If we let one go, the whole integrity of the department collapses. The colleges are already breathing down our necks about grade inflation. If we start certifying robots, we're done. Exactly, Henderson said. It's about standards. You did the right thing, she said. Don't lose sleep over it. It's a lesson. Better he learns it now than in a college lecture hall where he gets expelled for it. You're doing him a favor. The copier beeped. It spat out the worksheets. Henderson picked them up. They were warm. The ink smelled sharp and chemical. You're doing him a favor. The phrase repeated in his head as he walked down the hallway. It reframed the entire interaction. He wasn't the villain. He was the guardrail. He was the one brave enough to stop a kid from walking off a cliff. He entered his classroom at 7:55 a.m. He opened his email. There was a notification from the administration software. Subject Academic Dishonesty Report, Fay 4029 Williams, Marcus. He clicked it. It wasn't an email from a person. It was an automated receipt. The system had processed the 0. It had processed the red flag. It had automatically generated a notification to the parent's email on file. Dear Parent Guardian, this is an automated notification regarding a disciplinary action. It was clean. It was efficient. The system had taken Henderson's messy, uncomfortable judgment call and turned it into a sterile procedure. There were codes attached, violation 4A, plagiarism, unauthorized technology. There was a PDF attachment titled Remediation at Contract PDF. Henderson printed it. The bell rang. The students filtered in. The usual noise. The scraping of chairs. The gossip. Henderson stood at the front, holding his stack of worksheets. He watched the door. Marcus walked in last. He was wearing the same gray hoodie. He didn't look at Henderson. He walked straight to his desk in the third row. Near the window, he sat down and took out a notebook. A physical notebook. He didn't take out a laptop. Henderson felt a pang of something. Annoyance. Pity. He walked down the rows, handing out the worksheets. Take one, pass it back, he said. The rhythm of the class took over. When he reached Marcus's row, he didn't just hand the stack over. He placed a single sheet of paper on Marcus's desk, on top of the worksheet. It was the remediation contract. The class was loud. Shifting gears, getting pens out. No one was looking. This was a private transaction between the institution and the individual. Marcus looked at the paper. Marcus Williams, acknowledged that I violated the academic integrity policy. Henderson leaned in. He kept his voice low, professional. A whisper meant for business. It's standard procedure, Marcus, Henderson said. Since I flagged the grade, the system generated this. It's a contract. It basically says you understand why you received the grade, and you agree to attend a 30-minute workshop on proper citation next Tuesday during lunch. Marcus stared at the paper. He didn't touch it. If you sign it, Henderson continued, the 0 stands, but it doesn't go on your permanent disciplinary transcript. It just stays internal. We call it a warning strike. If you don't sign it, Henderson trailed off. He didn't need to finish the sentence. The implication was clear. If you don't sign it, you are challenging the system. If you challenge the system fights back. The 0 becomes a suspension. The suspension becomes a record. The record becomes a problem for colleges. It was a trap, a beautiful, bureaucratic trap. To minimize the damage, Marcus had to admit to a lie he hadn't told. I didn't do it, Marcus whispered. He wasn't looking at Henderson. He was looking at the word acknowledge. Marcus, Henderson sighed. He checked his watch. He had a lesson to teach. He couldn't spend 20 minutes debating reality with a teenager. The software doesn't make mistakes like this. It's 92%. That is a mathematical certainty. You're a smart kid. Do the math. I am a smart kid, Marcus said. That's why I wrote the paper. Then show me the drafts, Henderson said. Show me the edit history. I told you. Library computer. It wipes every night. Then you have no proof, Henderson said. He tapped the contract with his index finger. And I have a report that says you cheated. Look, I'm trying to help you keep this small. Just sign the paper, do the workshop, and we move on. You can rewrite the essay for partial credit next week. I'll even cap it at a 70 so you don't fail the quarter. It was a generous offer. Truly, Henderson felt a swell of pride at his own leniency. Most teachers wouldn't offer the rewrite. Marcus looked around the room. The other students were working. Heads down. Pens moving, they were safe. They were in the flow. Marcus was alone on an island. He looked at Henderson. The defiance from Friday was gone. It was replaced by a dull, flat pragmatism. He looked at the teacher, and then he looked at the contract. He picked up his pen. It was a cheap, blue ballpoint pen. He clicked the top. Click. He didn't read the rest of the text. He didn't read the paragraph about ethical failings or breach of trust. He just went to the bottom of the page. He signed his name, Marcus Williams. He pushed the paper toward the edge of the desk. Thank you, Henderson said. He snatched the paper up quickly. Before the moment could curdle, you made the right choice, Marcus. Put this behind you. Henderson walked back to his desk. He slipped the signed contract into his folder. It was done. The loop was closed. The system had worked. The anomaly had been identified, processed, and rectified. He stood at the front of the room. All right, everyone, Henderson said, his voice projecting clear and strong. Let's look at the document in front of you. Who can tell me what the primary fuel source was for the early industrial engines? And hands went up. Henderson called on Sarah in the front row. Coal, she said. Correct, Henderson said. He smiled. Coal cheap, dirty, but efficient. It powered the world. He glanced at the third row. Marcus was looking out the window. He wasn't looking at the worksheet. He wasn't writing. He was just staring at the parking lot. Henderson felt a tiny prick of irritation. Pay attention, he thought. I just saved you. He turned back to the board and picked up a marker. He wrote Cowell in big black letters. The class moved on. The 0 in the grade book was now locked. It had been validated by a signature. It was no longer an accusation. It was a confession. The normalization was complete. Henderson felt his shoulders relax. The tension of the weekend evaporated. He was a good teacher. He held the line. He didn't notice that Marcus hadn't blinked in a long time. 3 weeks later, the software updated. It happened overnight, a silent push to the district servers. When Henderson logged in on a Tuesday morning, the interface had changed. The stark, accusatory red banners were gone. They had been replaced by a soft, calming teal. The button that used to say report violation now read request authenticity review. It was the same button. It did the same thing, but it felt nicer to click. The fall semester was grinding into its darkest phase. The days were shorter. The fluorescent lights in the hallway seemed to hum louder against the gray afternoon sky. The rhythm of the school year had calcified into a heavy, predictable routine. Wake up, drive, grade, police, drive, sleep. The flags became part of the weather. Henderson didn't agonize over them anymore. The first time, with Marcus, had kept him up for a night. The second time, with a girl named Jasmine in his third period, cost him a lunch break of hesitation. By the 10th time, it was just muscle memory. Open essay. Check sidebar. See the percentage. If it was over 60%, he didn't even read the text. He didn't have to. The machine had already read it for him. He just highlighted the paragraph, right-clicked, and selected the pre-written comment the software suggested. Please see me regarding source attribution. It was efficient. It saved him hours of grading time. He began to trust the teal bar implicitly. It was an objective standard in a subjective world. It cut through the noise. In the faculty lounge, the mood had shifted from panic to triumph. I caught 6 of them yesterday, Miller said. He taught civics. He was eating a sandwich with one hand and scrolling through his iPad with the other. 6. Bam, bam, bam. They don't even try to hide it anymore. It's the vocabulary, Linda added from the microwave. That's the tell. I had a kid use the word amalgamation in a sentence about the Bill of Rights. I mean, come on. These kids don't speak like that? Henderson stirred his coffee. What did he say when you called him on it? He said he learned it from a podcast? Linda laughed. The microwave beeped. A podcast, right? Like they're listening to political theory on the bus. Miller chuckled. They just think we're stupid. That's what it is. They think because they have a phone, they're smarter than us. The software puts the fear of God back in them. It's accountability, Henderson said. He repeated the word he'd used in his own head a dozen times. We're teaching them that shortcuts don't work. Exactly, Miller said. If they can't write a simple sentence, they don't deserve the grade. I'd rather read a broken sentence that's real than a perfect paragraph that's fake. Henderson nodded. It sounded right. It sounded moral. He went back to his classroom for his prep period. He had a stack of essays on the Great Depression. He pulled up Marcus Williams's file. Since the incident with the reconstruction paper, Marcus had been invisible. He came to class on time. He sat in the third row. He opened his book. He stared at the board. He never raised his hand. He never asked a question. He never made eye contact. He was the perfect student. He was silent. Henderson opened Marcus's submission. He felt a small knot of anxiety in his stomach, a ghost of the old tension. He hoped, genuinely hoped, that this one would be clean. He didn't want another confrontation. He wanted to believe that the intervention had worked, that the remediation contract had done its job. He waited for the sidebar to load. The teal bar appeared. Probability of artificial generation, 2%. Henderson let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. Green light. Clean. He started to read. The Great Depression was a very hard time for America. People did not have money. The banks closed down and took the money. People had to stand in lines for soup. It was sad because jobs were gone. Henderson frowned. He read the next paragraph. President Roosevelt made the New Deal. It helped some people get jobs. They built roads and bridges. It was better than nothing. But it was still hard. The sentences were short. The vocabulary was elementary. The syntax was repetitive. There was no nuance. There was no analysis of systemic disenfranchisement. There was no mention of the codification of labor practices. It was a C-level paper. Maybe a C+ if he was being generous. But it was human. The software said so. The software said this was authentic. This was what Marcus Williams sounded like. This was the baseline. Henderson felt a wave of relief wash over him. This he could work with. This was manageable. A student struggling with sentence variety was a teaching problem. A student generating doctoral-level thesis statements was a disciplinary problem. He highlighted the phrase, "It was sad because jobs were gone." He typed a comment, "True, but can you expand on the economic impact?" Good start. He went to the grade box. He typed 82. It was a B-. It was a safe grade. It was a grade that said, you did what was asked. You stayed in your lane. You didn't cause trouble. He felt good about it. He felt like he was nurturing growth. He was rewarding honesty. The next day, he handed the papers back. The class was noisy, the pre-holiday energy starting to bubble up. Henderson walked down the rows, sliding papers onto desks. When he got to the third row, he paused. Marcus was looking at his hands. "Good job, Marcus," Henderson said. He placed the paper with the 82 on the desk. He made sure to smile. He wanted to reinforce the positive behavior. "This is a big improvement. This is your own voice. Keep developing this." Marcus looked at the paper. He looked at the 82. He didn't look at the comments. He didn't look at the feedback. "Thanks," Marcus said. The word was empty. It wasn't sarcastic. It wasn't angry. It was just a sound required to make the teacher go away. Henderson walked back to the front of the room. He felt a sense of order restored. The system worked. The guardrails were holding. He didn't see what happened next. 2 rows over, a girl named Sarah, the one who sat in the front, got her paper back. She had received a 96. She had used the phrase catastrophic economic liquidity crisis. The software hadn't flagged her. Her probability score was 12%. Sarah's father was a lawyer. Her mother was a professor. Sarah had been tutored in academic writing since she was 6. Her natural voice sounded like a textbook because she had been trained to mimic the textbook. Marcus had learned a different lesson. He had learned that his natural voice, the voice that read books at the downtown library, the voice that absorbed complex ideas and synthesized them, was a liability. It was dangerous. It triggered the alarms. To survive, he had to perform incompetence. He had to simulate being less intelligent than he was. Henderson watched the class from his desk. He saw Sarah smiling at her grade. He saw Marcus sliding his paper into his backpack without reading it. Henderson felt a warm glow of professional competence. He had caught the cheater, corrected the behavior, and now the student was passing. He opened his email. There was a newsletter from the district superintendent. Subject: Embracing the future of education. We are proud to announce that our district-wide implementation of Veritas AI detection has reduced academic dishonesty incidents by 40% in just 2 months. We are preparing students for a world where integrity is the ultimate currency. Henderson deleted the email. He didn't need to read it. He lived it. He picked up his red pen. "Okay, everyone," he called out. "Open your books to page 142. Let's talk about the Dust Bowl." Marcus opened his book. He turned the pages slowly. He stopped on page 142. He stared at the picture of the dust storm swallowing a house. Henderson started talking. He talked about erosion. He talked about poor farming practices. Marcus didn't take notes. He just sat there. The pen he was holding hovered over his notebook. He wrote a single word. Then he crossed it out. Then he wrote it again, simpler. He was learning the new language, the language of safety. Henderson saw Marcus writing and thought, good. He's engaging. He didn't know that he was watching a mind dismantle itself in real time, brick by brick, just to fit inside the room. The auditorium smelled of damp wool and floor polish. It was a professional development day, January 5th, the first day back after the winter break. The heating vents were rattling, struggling against the frost on the windows. Mr. Henderson sat in the middle of the auditorium, row 12, seat 4. He had a styrofoam cup of lukewarm coffee balanced on his knee. On the large projection screen at the front of the stage, a logo hovered, Veritas Educational Solutions, the Science of Truth. A man in a navy blazer and crisp chinos was pacing the stage. He had a microphone headset that made him look like a motivational speaker or a spin class instructor. His name was Jason. He clicked a remote, and the slide changed. A graph appeared. It showed 2 jagged lines, one blue, chaotic and spiky, one red, smooth and flat. "We call this perplexity and burstiness," Jason said. His voice was amplified, booming slightly too loud for the half-empty room. "This is how Veritas sees the world. It's not magic. It's math." Henderson shifted in his seat. The plastic chair was hard. He took a sip of the coffee. It tasted like burnt water. "Human thought is messy," Jason continued, pointing the laser pointer at the blue, jagged line. "When you write, you pause. You change direction. You use a short sentence. Then a long, meandering one that maybe runs on a bit too long because you're trying to find your point. You make strange word choices. That's the blue line. High perplexity, high burstiness." He clicked the remote again. The red line glowed. "I doesn't do that," Jason said. Large language models are predictive engines. They always choose the most statistically probable next word. They are smooth. They are consistent. They are perfect. That's the red line. Low perplexity. Flat. Henderson nodded. It made sense. It was reassuring to hear the mechanics explained. It validated the intuition he had felt with Marcus's paper. That essay had been smooth. Too smooth. It had flowed like water down a pipe, not like a teenager stumbling through a thought. Now, Jason said, stopping in the center of the stage. We get a lot of questions about bias. We get asked, does Veritas unfairly target certain groups? The room went quiet. A few teachers looked up from their phones. This was the elephant in the room. The answer is no, Jason said firmly. The algorithm is blind. It doesn't know race. It doesn't know gender. It only knows syntax. He clicked to the next slide. It was a list of bullet points under the heading Common False Positive Triggers. However, Jason said, his voice dropping to a confidential register, there are linguistic patterns that can confuse the model. We call these adversarial syntax. He read the first bullet point. Hyper, correction, die-over, formalization. Sometimes, Jason explained, we see this with non-native speakers or students from, let's say, under-resourced backgrounds who are trying very hard to sound academic. They overcompensate. They use utilize instead of use. They use passive voice. They string together complex clauses because they think that's what smart writing looks like. To the AI, that lack of casual friction looks like a machine. Henderson froze. The coffee cup in his hand went perfectly still. Students from under-resourced backgrounds who are trying very hard to sound academic. The phrase hung in the air, suspended in the dust motes of the auditorium light. They stripped their own personality out of the text. Jason was saying, oblivious to the bomb he had just dropped. They polish it until it's flat. And when it's flat, the probability score goes up. It's not that they cheated. It's that they wrote like a robot to please the teacher. Henderson stared at the screen. Hyper-correction. He thought of Marcus. He thought of the gray hoodie. He thought of the phrase ostensibly dismantled. It wasn't a shortcut. It was armor. Marcus hadn't asked a computer to write the paper for him. Marcus had tried to write a paper that couldn't be attacked. He had used the biggest, safest, most bulletproof words he could find in the library books. He had tried to sound like the books because he didn't think his own voice would be respected. And because he had succeeded. Because he had written a sentence so grammatically perfect, so structurally sound. The machine had called him a liar. And Henderson had signed off on it. A cold sweat broke out on the back of Henderson's neck. He felt a sudden, sharp nausea. He looked around the room. The other teachers were taking notes. Miller, 3 rows down, was nodding. They were writing down hyper-correction like it was a vocabulary word for a test. They didn't see the blood on the floor. Henderson stood up. "Excuse me," he whispered to the teacher next to him. He squeezed past the knees of his colleagues. He walked up the aisle. He needed air. He pushed through the double doors at the back of the auditorium and stepped into the empty hallway. It was quiet out here. The lockers stood in silent, gray rows. Henderson walked to his classroom. He unlocked the door. The room was dark. He didn't turn on the overhead lights. He just walked to his desk and opened his laptop. His hands were shaking slightly. He logged into Veritas. The teal dashboard greeted him. "Welcome back, Robert." He needed to know. He needed to be sure. He opened a new tab. He searched for a text. He needed something specific. Something high register, passionate, formal, but undeniably human. He typed W.E.B. Du Bois' The Souls of Black Folk text. He found a passage. Chapter 1. The history of the American Negro is the history of this strife, this longing to attain self-conscious manhood, to merge his double self into a better and truer self. In this merging, he wishes neither of the older selves to be lost. He would not Africanize America, for America has too much to teach the world in Africa. It was complex. It was dated. It was profound. Henderson copied the paragraph. He pasted it into the Veritas submission box. He hit analyze. The circle spun. Blue. Teal. It stopped 89% probability of artificial generation. The sidebar lit up red. High likelihood of machine-generated syntax, lack of colloquial variance. Vocabulary complexity exceeds standard baseline. Henderson stared at the number, 89%. Du Bois was a robot. According to the machine, the foundational text of black sociology was a hallucination. Henderson deleted the text. He typed in another one. A quote from Martin Luther King Jr.'s letter from Birmingham jail. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. We are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Analyze. 85% probability of artificial generation. The machine hated the cadence. It hated the preaching rhythm. It hated the structure that was built on sermons and spirituals and the King James Bible. It saw the beauty of the rhetoric and identified it as a mathematical anomaly. Henderson sat back in his chair. The darkness of the classroom felt heavy, like water pressure. He had failed Marcus. He hadn't just failed him, he had actively punished him for achieving the exact thing Henderson was supposed to be teaching. He had penalized excellence because it looked like a simulation of excellence. He looked at the grade book on his desk. The semester was over in 2 weeks. Marcus currently had a C. The 0 on the reconstruction paper was still there, anchoring his average down like a lead weight. Henderson could change it. He could go into the system right now. He could override the 0. He could claim it was a glitch. He could call Marcus in and apologize. He could say, "I was wrong. The machine is broken. You are a good writer." He moved the mouse to the gradebook tab. He hovered over the 0. But if he changed it, what then? If he admitted the machine was wrong about Marcus, was it wrong about Jasmine? Was it wrong about the 6 kids Miller caught? Was it wrong about the integrity of the entire district? If he admitted this, he was admitting that he, Mr. Henderson, the fair teacher, the good guy, had bullied a marginalized student into a false confession because he trusted a vendor's algorithm more than a child's eyes. He imagined the meeting with Vice Principal Lewis. He imagined explaining that the expensive software the district had just bought was racially biased against formal code switching. He imagined the paperwork. He imagined the parents. He imagined Marcus looking at him, knowing that Henderson knew. The shame was a physical thing. It burned in his throat. But beneath the shame, there was a colder, harder realization. The number was 89%. That was a B+. Even Du Bois didn't get a 100%. The machine wasn't broken, Henderson told himself. It was just literal. It was a tool. A blunt tool. And Marcus did sign the confession. Marcus had admitted guilt. Technically, legally, the case was closed. If Henderson reopened it now, based on a hunch and a few pasted quotes from dead men, he would be creating chaos. He would be disrupting the learning environment. He looked at the screen again. He looked at the dashboard. He clicked clear form. The Du Bois quote vanished. The King quote vanished. The box was empty again, clean white space. It's a probability, Henderson whispered to the empty room. Not a certainty. He was clinging to the linguistic loophole Jason had offered. Probability. Maybe Marcus did use AI. Maybe he just used it to polish the Du Bois style sentences. Maybe it was a mix. Henderson didn't know for sure. And because he didn't know for sure, he couldn't act. That was the logic. That was the distortion. He convinced himself that his inaction was actually a form of prudence. He was being careful. He was waiting for more data. He closed the laptop. He stood up and walked to the window. He looked out at the faculty parking lot. The frost was melting on the windshields. He had seen the truth. He had held it in his hands. It was jagged and sharp, and it cut him. So he put it down. He decided that the system's smooth, flat red line was better than the jagged blue mess of reality. He walked out of the classroom to go finish his coffee in the auditorium. He would sit through the rest of the presentation. He would nod at the slides. He would learn the new terminology. He left the light off in the classroom, leaving the ghost of Marcus's potential in the dark. The gymnasium was partitioned into a maze of low tables and folding chairs. It was parent-teacher conference night. The air was thick with the smell of floor varnish, wet coats, and the low, anxious murmur of 200 simultaneous conversations about potential. Henderson sat at table 14. He had a pitcher of water and a stack of student files. He had been talking for 3 hours. His voice was raspy. He had perfected the art of the sandwich method. Compliment, critique, compliment. She's a delight in class. She struggles with the reading load, but she has a great attitude. It was a script. It kept the parents calm. It kept the line moving. At 7:45 p.m., the chair opposite him scraped against the floor. Henderson looked up. A woman sat down. She was wearing a nursing scrub top, light blue, with a heavy cardigan over it. She looked like she had come straight from a 12-hour shift. Her eyes were dark, rimmed with the kind of exhaustion that sleep doesn't touch. Monsieur Henderson, she said. It wasn't a question. Yes! Henderson said, straightening his tie. And you are Regina Williams, Marcus's mother. Henderson felt a sudden, sharp drop in his stomach. He hadn't expected her. Marcus hadn't mentioned she was coming. Usually, the parents of the kids with the red flags didn't show up. They were too busy or too angry, or they just knew that the school wasn't a place where they won. Mems. Williams, Henderson said, forcing a smile. He reached for his laptop to pull up Marcus's file, stalling for time. It's good to meet you. He's a quiet presence in class. He's quiet now, she said. Her voice was level. He wasn't quiet before? Henderson stopped typing. He looked at her. I wanted to ask you about the zero, she said. Henderson said. He felt the familiar defensive walls sliding into place. The protocol, the procedure, the reconstruction essay. My son says he wrote it. Ms. Williams, Henderson said, his voice dropping to a sympathetic, confidential register. I understand that's what he told you, and I want to believe him. I really do. But we have systems in place. He reads those books. She interrupted. She didn't raise her voice. She just laid the fact on the table like a stone. We have a bookshelf in the living room. It's mostly thrift store books. He reads history. He reads about the economy. He talks to his grandfather about unions. That language. That systemic whatever. That's how he talks when he's excited. Henderson felt a prick of irritation. This was the denial phase. He had seen it 100 times. I appreciate that, Henderson said gently. But the software we use is very sophisticated. It flagged the essay at a 92% probability. That's not a margin of error. That's a match. So the computer knows my son better than I do. Eat knows writing patterns, Henderson corrected. Look, Miss Williams, we handled this weeks ago. Marcus signed a remediation contract. He admitted to the infraction. He took the workshop. We've moved past it. He opened the folder on the table and pulled out the paper. The white sheet with the blue signature at the bottom. Marcus Williams. He placed it between them, the shield. He signed this because he was scared, she said, looking at the signature. He said you told him if he didn't sign it, it would go on his permanent record. He said he had to choose between being a liar and being expelled. I told him the options, Henderson said stiffly. I was trying to protect him from a harsher penalty. If I had sent that to the vice principal without the confession, he could have been suspended. I gave him a grace period. You gave him a corner, she said. I gave him a second chance. Henderson leaned forward. And look at his grades since then. He's passing. He's turning in work that is consistent. He's getting B's. He's doing fine. He's bored, she said. He comes home and throws his backpack in the corner and doesn't open it. He used to write in a journal. He stopped doing that, too. He's learning to write for the assignment, Henderson said. That's a skill, Ms. Williams. In the real world, you don't always get to write whatever you want. You have to follow the format. You have to meet the baseline. The baseline, she repeated. She looked around the gym. She looked at the other parents, the other teachers. So the goal is to make him average. Here was the trap. Henderson could see it clearly. If he agreed with her, if he said, yes, your son is brilliant, and the machine is wrong, and I was wrong, and the system is designed to crush outlier talent in black boys, then what? He would have to tear up the contract. He would have to change the grade. He would have to go to the administration and explain that their expensive new safety net was actually an electrified fence. He would be the troublemaker. He would be the one questioning the science of truth. And for what? To give one kid an A on one paper? It wasn't worth the capital. It wasn't worth the risk. But if he stayed the course, he had to look this woman in the eye and tell her that her son's brilliance was a defect. He had to convince her that making Marcus smaller was actually making him safer. He chose the second option. It was the only one that kept his world intact. The goal, Henderson said, is to make him successful. And right now, success looks like following the academic integrity guidelines. It looks like producing work that can be verified. He paused, then played his ace. Ms. Williams, let's be realistic. If Marcus goes to college and submits a paper like that, and a professor runs it through the same software, and they will, he won't get a warning. He'll get expelled. Do you want that? She went quiet. Henderson pressed the advantage. I am teaching him how to survive in a system that is going to be scrutinizing him his entire life. You know that better than I do. He can't give them a reason to doubt him. He has to be unassailable. And sometimes that means keeping it simple. It means showing your work. It means not painting a target on your back by trying to sound like a textbook. He watched the fight drain out of her. It was a cruel thing to say. It weaponized her own fear for her son against her. He was telling her that her son was too smart for his own good, and that for his own safety, she should help Henderson dumb him down. She looked at the contract again. She touched the corner of the paper. He really wrote it? She whispered. It wasn't an argument anymore. It was a warning. I know you believe that, Henderson said benevolently, and that's what matters. You believe in him. But here, in this building, we have to go by the data. He closed the file. My recommendation, Henderson said, offering the solution. Encourage him to keep doing what he's been doing the last 3 weeks. Simple sentences, clear ideas. Don't overreach. If he keeps this up, he'll finish the semester with a solid B. He'll get the credit. He'll graduate. That's the win, isn't it? Ms. Williams stood up. She pulled her cardigan tighter around herself. She looked at Henderson, and for a second he thought she might spit on him. But she didn't. She was too tired, and she knew deep down that he was holding all the cards. He had the grade book. He had the signature. He had the institution. Thank you for your time, she said. She turned and walked away. She walked past the basketball hoop, past the water fountain, and out the double doors. Henderson watched her go. He let out a long exhale. He took a drink of water. His hand was steady. He told himself he had done the right thing. He had de-escalated. He had aligned the parent with the school's strategy. He had protected Marcus from future, higher-stakes failures. He had preserved the peace. He checked his watch. 8:00 p.m. 2 more parents. He didn't think about the fact that he had just convinced a mother to be complicit in the erasure of her son's mind. He didn't think about the fact that he had just asked a black woman to teach her son how to be less threatening to a white algorithm. He just thought, that went better than expected. He opened the next file. Subject Sarah Miller. Notes high achiever, 2% probability score, excellent vocabulary. Next, Henderson called out to the waiting chairs. May arrived with a violent bloom of pollen. The windows of the classroom were propped open, letting in the thick, yellow air and the distant sound of lawnmowers circling the football field. The semester was bleeding out. The urgency of January had dissolved into the restless lethargy of late spring. The seniors were already mentally gone, checking out mentally, their bodies just occupying chairs until the final bell. The juniors were eyeing the empty seats, ready to ascend. Mr. Henderson felt light. He had survived the year. The standardized test scores were in, and his class average was up by 3 points. The administration was happy. The Veritas dashboard was quiet. The teal bars had held steady for months. There had been no major incidents, no parent emails seeking the superintendent, no messy disciplinary hearings. He felt like a gardener who had aggressively pruned a wild hedge and was finally seeing the clean, geometric shape emerge. He sat at his desk, sorting through the final portfolio submissions. This was the last major grade, a personal narrative. The prompt was simple: write about a moment that changed your perspective. He picked up the folder on top, Marcus Williams. Henderson opened it. He felt a warm, paternal anticipation. Marcus had been the success story of the year. He was the proof of concept. He had started as a defiant, reckless student trying to game the system, and he had ended as a disciplined, reliable learner. He had a B+ average. He turned in every assignment on time. He never used a word he couldn't define. Henderson began to read Marcus's final essay. The day I learned to fix a tire. It was hot outside. My bike had a flat. I didn't know what to do. My dad showed me the tools. We took the wheel off. It was hard work. I had to be patient. When we finished, I rode the bike. It felt good to fix it myself. Henderson nodded. It was simple. It was linear. It was grounded in concrete action. Subject, verb, object. No systemic implications. No sociological parallels. Just a boy and a bike. Henderson glanced at the sidebar. Probability of artificial generation new percent. It was pure. Henderson reached for his red pen. He wrote 9100 at the top. He added a comment, excellent clarity. You really stayed focused on the event. This is your strongest work yet. He meant it. He truly believed that this stripped-down, hollowed-out version of the story was better because it was verifiable. It was safe. It was consumable. He looked up. The bell was about to ring for the final period. Marcus walked in. He moved differently now. The gray hoodie was gone, replaced by a plain T-shirt. He walked with his shoulders hunched slightly, eyes on the floor, navigating the grid of desks without touching anything. He sat down. He took out his notebook. He waited. Henderson felt a surge of generosity. He wanted to acknowledge the journey. He wanted to put a bow on it. "Marcus," Henderson called out. "Can I see you for a second?" The other students were still filing in, loud and chaotic. Marcus stood up immediately, no hesitation, no slow walk, just instant compliance. He walked to the desk. "Yes, sir. I just graded your final narrative," Henderson said, tapping the paper. "It's fantastic." Marcus looked at the paper. He didn't smile. "Okay, I mean it, Marcus. The growth you've shown this semester, it's remarkable. You've really learned how to find your own voice." Henderson watched Marcus's face, waiting for the pride, waiting for the moment of connection where the student realizes the teacher was pushing him for his own good. Marcus just blinked. His eyes were flat. "My own voice?" he repeated. "Yes," Henderson said, leaning back. "It's authentic. It sounds like you." Marcus looked at the essay about the bicycle. "It sounds like me," he said. "Exactly." Henderson lowered his voice, making the moment special. "In fact, I wanted to talk to you about next year. I'm looking at the rosters, and I see you're signed up for standard U.S. history." "Yes, sir." "I think that's a mistake," Henderson said. He smiled, benevolent and wise. "I think you should be in AP. I think you're ready." This was the reward. This was the moment Henderson had been building toward. He was opening the gate. He was inviting Marcus back into the fold of the elite, now that Marcus had learned the rules of entry. Marcus went very still. "AP?" Marcus asked. "Advanced placement?" Henderson nodded. "It's more reading, more writing. But I think you have the discipline for it now. You've learned how to structure your thoughts. You've stopped trying to impress people with big words and started focusing on clarity. That's what AP requires." It was a lie. Henderson knew it was a lie as he said it. AP history required complexity. It required synthesis. It required exactly the kind of high-level, structural analysis that Marcus had attempted in the reconstruction paper. The kind of writing that got flagged. But Henderson wasn't thinking about the curriculum. He was thinking about the redemption arc. He wanted to be the teacher who saved the at-risk, smart kid. "I can sign the waiver right now," Henderson said, uncapping his pen. "We can switch you. It'll look great on your college apps." Marcus looked at the pen. Then he looked at Henderson. For the first time in months, something flickered behind the boy's eyes. It wasn't the old defiance, it was fear. Pure, cold fear. "No," Marcus said. Henderson paused. "No, I can't take AP. Why not? You have the grades." "I can't write like that anymore," Marcus said softly. "Like what?" "Like smart," Marcus said. The word sounded dirty in his mouth. "If I go to AP, I have to write long papers. I have to use the words from the books." "Well, yes, but if I use the words from the books," Marcus said, his voice trembling slightly, "the machine will catch me." "Marcus," Henderson sighed, "the machine isn't out to get you. It's just checking for. It checks for patterns." Marcus interrupted. He was speaking fast now, a sudden leak in the dam. "It checks if I sound too different from the other kids. The AP kids, they're allowed to sound like that. They have the profile for it. Sarah has the profile. I don't." Henderson froze. "If I go to AP," Marcus whispered, leaning in closer, "I'll get flagged again." "I know I will." "Henderson, I can't take another 0. My mom, she can't handle another meeting. You won't get flagged if you do the work honestly." Henderson insisted. He felt the narrative slipping. "You just have to write it yourself." "I did write it myself," Marcus hissed. The volume of the whisper spiked. A few heads in the front row turned. Marcus pulled back instantly. He shrank. He looked terrified that he had made a noise. Marcus corrected himself, his voice flattening out instantly, returning to the drone. I'm not good at that kind of writing. I'm better at this." He pointed to the bicycle essay. "Simple," Marcus said. "Safe. The Henderson looked the boy. He saw the logic. It was perfect, brutal logic. Marcus had learned the lesson Henderson taught him. He had learned that his intelligence was a liability. He had learned that his capacity for complex thought was a probability trigger. He was refusing the promotion because he knew he couldn't survive the scrutiny that came with it. Henderson should have stopped there. He should have accepted the no. He should have let Marcus stay in the safe, shallow water of the standard track, but Henderson couldn't accept that he had broken the boy. He needed to believe he had fixed him. So he did the wrong thing. He pushed. Marcus, Henderson said, his voice stern, you are letting fear dictate your future. I am telling you as your teacher that you are good enough. I am telling you to take the class. I'm going to recommend you for it. I'm going to put the waiver in your file. He thought he was being inspiring. He thought he was being stand and deliver. I'm doing this because I believe in you, Henderson said. You'll thank me later. He signed the form. R. Henderson. He slid it into the folder. It's done, Henderson said. You're in AP next year. Congratulations. He expected a smile. He expected a reluctant nod. Marcus looked at the folder. He looked at it like it contained a bomb. He didn't say thank you. He didn't argue. He just took a step back. Okay, Marcus said. It was the same okay from the first day. The okay of a prisoner being told he was being moved to a different cell. Go take your seat, Henderson said, feeling a strange, hollow vibration in his chest. We have a movie today. Marcus walked back to the third row. Henderson turned to his computer. He pulled up the AP recommendation portal. He typed in Marcus's name. Under reason for recommendation, Henderson typed, student has demonstrated significant growth in self-regulation and adherence to academic standards. Potential's high. He hit submit. The screen flashed green. Success. Henderson sat back. He told himself he had just opened a door. He didn't let himself think about the fact that he had just shoved a boy who had learned to play dead into a room full of wolves. He didn't let himself think about next year, about the first paper, about the first time Marcus would try to write a complex sentence and his hand would shake and he would delete it and he would write the bike was red instead and he would fail AP, not because he wasn't smart enough, but because he was too terrified to show it. Henderson turned off the lights for the movie. Lights out, he said. The room went dark. The projector hummed to life. In the flickering blue light, Henderson saw Marcus staring at the blank screen. He wasn't watching the movie, he was just waiting. And Henderson felt good. He felt like a teacher who made a difference. Graduation day was a spectacle of uniformity. The football field had been transformed into a grid of white folding chairs, baking under the relentless June sun. A sea of maroon gowns rippled in the heat. From the bleachers, you couldn't tell them apart. You couldn't tell the rich kids from the poor kids. You couldn't tell the cheaters from the honest ones. You just saw the color. Mr. Henderson sat in the faculty section, wearing his heavy black academic robe. He was sweating, but he felt a profound sense of professional satisfaction. He watched the ceremony with the critical eye of a quality control manager. The valedictorian was speaking. It was Sarah. She stood at the podium, her blonde hair catching the light, reading from a stack of index cards. As we look to the future, Sarah's voice boomed over the PA system. We must remember that the path to success is paved with integrity. We must be the architects of our own destiny, building bridges, not walls. Henderson smiled. It was a perfect speech. It was structured. It hit all the thematic beats: resilience, community, future. He knew because he had seen the draft. Sarah had run it through Veritas before submitting it for approval. It had come back with a 15% probability of artificial generation. A clean, safe score. The architects of our own destiny line was a bit cliché, a bit hollow, but the algorithm liked clichés. Clichés were predictable. Clichés were low perplexity. The algorithm had flagged her original draft, the one where she talked about her grandmother's dementia, as emotionally manipulative and structurally inconsistent. So Sarah had cut the grandmother. She had passed it in the bridges and walls, and now the audience was clapping. The parents were wiping their eyes. The system worked. Henderson scanned the rows of maroon caps looking for Marcus. He found him in the third row. Marcus was staring straight ahead. He wasn't looking at the stage. He wasn't looking at his phone. He was just sitting there, hands folded in his lap, perfectly still. He had survived AP History. It had been a quiet year. Marcus had turned in every assignment. He had written 12 essays. Not one of them had been flagged. Not one of them had used a word with more than 3 syllables unless it was a proper noun. He had received a B in the class. A solid, unthreatened B. He had learned the lesson. The names began to be called. Adams, Baker, Collins, Henderson clapped politely for each one. He thought about the year. He thought about the email he had received that morning from the district office. Subject contract renewal. Veritas Educational Solutions, dear staff, we are thrilled to announce that based on the 40% reduction in academic dishonesty flags this year, the district has signed a 5-year exclusive contract with Veritas. 5 years. Job security. Order. Miller, Sarah. Sarah walked across the stage waving. The crowd roared. She was going to Yale. She had played the game perfectly. Williams, Marcus. The applause was thinner, polite. Marcus stood up. He walked to the stairs. He ascended the platform. He didn't look at the audience. He didn't look at the principal as he took the diploma folder. He shook the hand, paused for the photo, and kept walking. He moved like a man walking on ice. Careful, precise. Don't slip. Don't make a sudden movement. Henderson felt a lump in his throat. He felt proud. He really did. He looked at that boy and saw a rescue operation. He saw a kid who had almost thrown his future away on arrogance and fake intellectual posturing, who had been guided back to reality. The ceremony ended. Caps were thrown. The grid dissolved into chaos. Henderson waded into the crowd. He wanted to shake hands. He wanted to close the loop. He found Marcus near the concession stand. He was standing alone, holding his diploma. His mother wasn't there yet. "Marcus!" Henderson called out, putting on his best teacher-mentor smile. Marcus turned. He saw Henderson. He didn't smile back, but he didn't run away either. He just waited. "Congratulations," Henderson said, extending his hand. "You made it." Marcus shook the hand. His grip was loose. "Thank you, Mr. Henderson. I was looking for your mom," Henderson said. "Is she here?" "She's working," Marcus said. "She couldn't get the shift covered." "That's a shame. She would be proud." "Yeah, so," Henderson said, rocking back on his heels. "What's the plan?" "State. Community?" Marcus said. "I got in for the spring semester." "Excellent. Smart choice." "Economical?" Henderson nodded enthusiastically. "And the major? History? You have a knack for it? You know. Once you got the basics down." Marcus looked at the concession stand. He looked at the slushy machine churning red and blue ice. "Data entry?" Marcus said. Henderson blinked. "Data entry? You mean computer science?"
No, just data entry, administration, logistics. Oh,
Henderson said. He felt a slight deflation. "Well, it's a stable field. Lots of jobs." "That's what I thought," Marcus said. "You don't have to write essays in logistics. You just input the numbers. If the numbers match, you're good. If they don't, you fix them." He said it without irony. He said it like it was the most important truth he had ever learned. "Well," Henderson said, trying to recover the celebratory mood, "don't sell yourself short. You have a good head on your shoulders. That final paper you wrote for me, the one about the bicycle, that was real writing. Keep doing that." Marcus looked at Henderson. The sun was behind the teacher, creating a halo effect around his head. "I burned them," Marcus said. "Burned what?" "The journals. The ones I used to keep. The stories." Henderson frowned. "Why would you do that?" "They were too high risk," Marcus said. "I read them back and they sounded flagged. I sounded like I was trying too hard. So I got rid of them. I didn't want to take them to college. I wanted a clean slate." He said it so calmly. He talked about burning his own thoughts the way someone talks about deleting old emails. "Marcus," Henderson said, a little uneasy now. "You don't have to, the software is just a tool. It's not a judgment on who you are, isn't it?" Marcus asked. He looked Henderson in the eye. For a fleeting second, Henderson saw the old Marcus, the Marcus who wrote about systemic disenfranchisement, the Marcus who had a fire in his belly. But the light in the boy's eyes was dim. It was like looking at a bulb running on low voltage. "It taught me where I fit," Marcus said. "It taught me that if I try to sound like them, I get punished. If I sound like me, I get ignored, so I just stopped." He shrugged. "I'm safe now, Mr. Henderson." "That's what you wanted, right?" Henderson opened his mouth, but no words came out. The accusation was too quiet to defend against. It wasn't an attack. It was a surrender. "I have to go," Marcus said. "My bus is coming." He turned and walked away. He walked past the crying mothers and the cheering fathers. He walked out of the stadium, his maroon gown flapping in the wind, looking like a small, gray figure against the bright blue sky. Henderson stood there. He watched the boy disappear. He felt a strange vibration in his pocket. It was his phone. He pulled it out. It was a notification from the school district app. Year-end performance review, Robert Henderson. He clicked it. The screen loaded. A pie chart appeared. It was mostly green. Student retention excellent. Standardized test alignment exceeds expectations. Academic integrity compliance 100%. Overall rating distinguished. A smile touched the corners of Henderson's lips. It was a reflex. The data was good. The numbers were green. The system was happy. He looked back at the gate where Marcus had vanished. He felt a momentary twinge, a mosquito bite of conscience. He wondered, for just a heartbeat, if the boy was right, if something had been lost that couldn't be quantified. But then he looked at his phone again. The screen was bright. The distinguished rating glowed. He swiped the notification away. He hadn't done anything wrong. He had followed the protocol. He had used the tools provided. He had prepared the student for the real world. The real world didn't want Marcus Williams the philosopher. The real world wanted Marcus Williams the data entry clerk. Henderson had just done his job. He put the phone back in his pocket. He turned back to the crowd, scanning the faces for the parents of next year's students, ready to shake hands and promise them that their children would be safe, that the standards would be upheld, and that everything, absolutely everything, was under control. The teacher failed the black boy for being too smart, and he didn't regret it instantly. He celebrated it as a victory for the system that made them both disappear. Thank you for listening. If this story stayed with you, consider liking the video, subscribing, and sharing it with someone who might feel it too.